Bless the Lord, oh my soul. Oh, my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before. Oh, my soul. Worship your holy name. The sun comes up. It's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. Oh, my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before. Oh, my soul. Worship your holy name. You're rich in love and you're slow to anger. Your name is great and your heart is kind. For all your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. Oh, my soul.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. My microphone's hiding my collar there. I wanted to make sure you guys saw that, so I was being legit. I just wanted you to know
We
that.
know you're a man of the cloth.
Otherwise, welcome. Glad you are here. Always glad to be with you. I enjoy this very, very much, and glad Jerry is sitting on my right. I think Marty's at Notre Dame. I think
Yes,
that's
he
where
was.
he is.
Yeah, he sent us those lovely pictures from the grotto yesterday, so
Yeah,
he
and
was
said
praying for us.
He said he lit a candle for us.
Yes.
At the grotto. So that's very nice. I mean, if you've ever been to Notre Dame, it is a beautiful, beautiful place. I mean, it just really is. I don't know what the faith life of Notre Dame is. I think it's stronger than it's been in the past, but it is just a beautiful, marvelous place to be at. The chapel, the grotto, and all that. So welcome, everybody. Thank you. Let's pray together. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So we are going to examine the great big question, what is spirituality? We're going to examine this a lot here tonight. What does it mean to have a spirituality? Does everybody have a spirituality? And why is it so hard sometimes to live the spiritual life in our world today? Bless us as we ponder these questions and so much more. Got a lot of books laying on the table here because a lot of things I really want to be able to quote and share with you tonight. Let's begin and let's ask God to be with us as we share about Him more and more each day, that we might grow ever more deeply into being more and more like Jesus. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
So thank you for being here, Jerry. Once again, it's like you've been here a while. You're getting used to that chair.
Yeah, getting here. Yeah, so I'm not ready to retire to take over, Marty. So,
Marty, you
He keeps
watching us on
threatening
your
us.
way back or something like that?
Yeah.
So glad to be with you, everybody. So
okay. Well, we'll get into this.
chapter 1 of Holy Longing. I do think it one of the great books of our time to be looking at, and I think we've tried to do this before, and we may have got waylaid somewhere along the way. But so hopefully we'll be much more focused this time.
Yeah. Well, as we talked earlier, there were a number of topics that we had covered in the past that you had copied out sections from this book and other books to cover that topic. So that's why
okay,
we've
that's what it
touched on some of these chapters, but for different reasons. So
Yes,
now
okay.
I think it's brilliant that you want to go through this.
Yeah, and
whole
folks,
way.
you guys can ask a lot of questions sometimes. You can do that.
Yeah, and if you don't have the book, it's a great read. It's one
a-
of those
it's a good
books to
read.
keep on your. You've worn yours out. I mean,
Yeah, the whole backing of it's broken, and everything else. So I use it a lot. So
So anyway, so Rolheiser says this is a book for you if you're struggling spiritually, which I think on some level all of
all
us
of us
are.
are at some level. Yeah, I think so too.
Teilhard de Chardin,
Teilhard
Chardin was both a scientist and mystic. Interesting guy, reading about him a little bit. He's
Yes.
a paleontologist and a priest. Used to ask why so many sincere, good persons did not believe in God. His answer was sympathetic, not judgmental. He felt that they must not have heard of God in the correct way. And I think that is
Very true. I agree with that too. I think that's very true. Everybody that I have heard who claims to be an atheist or different things, they get their image of God by people in the church. And oftentimes they see people in the church be very judgmental in many ways. And they get their view of God from a lot of that. Now, I want to just share with you quickly Thomas Halleck in his book called Touch the Wounds. And in there, he talks a little bit about this idea. He talks about atheism a lot. And he says at one point that atheism is actually a phenomena of the modern era because of the Enlightenments,
Right.
demythologizing the church in many ways. A lot of Christians believing, that God created the world in 24 hours a day, that Jonah was actually spewed up on the shore by a fish. And you're probably sitting there thinking, maybe we don't believe that.
yeah, right.
No, we don't. Literally, we don't. No, we don't believe that. And so they're demythologizing the Bible and running into Christians who were completely uneducated about what the Bible really was about. I think caused a phenomenon that we call atheism, and it goes along with what Teilhard de Chardin was talking about. They got and Nicky Gumbel. We were talking about the whole idea of faith the other day, and one of them, and he said the same thing. He said the God that atheists describe to me is a God I don't believe in either.
Right.
In my life.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So here, just real quickly, this guy is brilliant, but he writes this about atheists. He says this, it starts off, it says, for God's sake, some would immediately object. You mean you don't consider atheists to be fully human? He's talking about something else. So that's a little context there. My response must be carefully differentiated. I am convinced that most people who declare themselves to be atheists are atheists in name only. They call themselves atheists because the mystery that is disclosed by Christian faith, they do not call God. They believe there's a mystery. And I'll say, and my brother Russ might be watching this, and I'm thinking of my niece, Teresa, who you guys have met. She's been on with us. Maybe when we get ourselves together, that might happen again someday. But I see her seeking and pondering about life and what it means a lot. And I just love talking about those kinds of things. But I would suggest that what I call God, she might call something else.
Right.
So maybe she would say she's an atheist. Nevertheless, it is obvious, and where it isn't, we may assume that they have an openness to that mystery, and sometimes it is profounder than the case of many of us who call ourselves Christians. So he is saying that many people that might claim to be atheists or claim to be non-believers are open to the mystery that you and I call God more than we are.
Right.
Because I think a lot of times it may be a little judgmental about Christians. I think we're a little lazy about all this.
Yes. Yes.
A lot of times. And I think it's kind of sad that we are so lazy. And those of you who are watching us tonight and wondering about spirituality, I think it's awesome because this is at the heart of what we should be talking about. We should be fired. Oh, we use about fire a lot. Be fired up about this stuff. And I think there's a lot of atheists that are trying to find the meaning of life. And sometimes they're more driven than we Christians are and all
Right,
that.
right.
So
Well, that was the life we touched on this. You and I talked privately about this week, about this Etty Hillesum, just mentioned by name. But here's a woman who had a difficult life growing up, a promiscuous life in her early years, and
I watched half
had
of
to.
that. You sent
Did you
me.
watch that?
Half
I
of-
found that
Can
so
you give
compelling.
it to him?
Yeah, I'll send it to.
I mean, so we can put it up on the screen.
I'll
People-
see if I can. I don't
there's
have
a-
my phone.
There's
I
a
can't
book
get it.
that's written about Etty Hillesum, and I have her diary.
Yeah, yeah.
I've never
Yeah, I
been-
understand. If you have the whole diary, it includes a lot of stuff like her relationship with the men in her life and so on. And I think in this book, the guy, he condensed it and cut some of that out to really get to the spiritual side. And here's a woman who was, she was Jewish, but not practicing Jewish. And she found God in a very spiritual, contemplative way. And she called God, is very internalized, like we should think of as God inside of us.
God
and
by
everything.
ground.
Yes. And she became quite, I would say, a mystic and a real contemplative.
She's claimed to be. She is said to be
To
a
the
mystic,
point where, I
yes.
mean, she's read the Bible. But she just didn't fall into, I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew. But it's all there to the point where she volunteered as a Jew to go to Auschwitz to comfort those people, and she ended up dying there. So anyway, that's I don't want to deviate too
Yeah,
much
but
in
that's
this,
okay,
but
that's
the
good
person to look up.
because here is Etty Hillesum, and I sent this to my niece. When you sent that to me, I got halfway through it, and I thought here is an Rolheiser mentions Anne Frank, a Jewish kid, 14, 15
in the
years
same
old.
sentence.
And then Teresa Lisieux, you can't get more religious.
Mm-hmm.
In the same sentence as Etty Hillesum, who was rather promiscuous at a certain point in her life.
In the beginning.
And then all of a sudden becomes this great mystic. All of that outside the institutional church.
Yeah.
Even though she was a Bible reader.
Yeah.
And she was a reader of other mystics, and she was a reader of other.
She loved Matthew, and she loved the writings of St. Paul. She called him the something Jew. I forget. I don't know if you got to that point or not.
I did. And she read Augustine.
Yeah, Augustine,
liked Augustine.
Matthew, St. Paul. So and you read about
Journey
this
to a
life.
vibrant spirituality.
Yeah, very.
So
vibrant.
I am, because of that video you sent, I'm going to get that book.
Yeah, I only want to too.
And I want to know more about. Maybe I'll now finally I have it. I will finally read her journal.
Could be a good show about transformation.
Of her.
And for everyone to do.
How old was she when she died?
Only like 27 or something.
Okay, she was a young one when she died. She died.
She died smiling. She died. She was always smiling, and she found beauty in everything, even in those situations.
And in the midst of the whole mystery of her, here was a mystic of a deep spirituality in Auschwitz.
Right.
Which is quite remarkable. So yes, very, very good. Yeah, so not making light of atheism at all. And as Ruth Burroughs says, atheism requires us as Christians to rethink our faith, and rethink those things we think we're so certain about with all of this. And I appreciate that in her too. So
Steve put that up. Thanks, Steve. Because if you Google that, it comes up. And the talk we're talking about is also, it's a talk at St. Paul's Cathedral in London.
There she is, Russ. Did you get that? And there she is. You got up twice. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, the first link is the diary, the book on Amazon. The second link is just the Wikipedia about her.
But the thing we need to get is your video.
Yeah. And the book, if you Google her, the video comes up.
It's
And
on
you can see
YouTube.
it. It's on YouTube. I just found her because I Googled her, and that came up. And the name of the book, I don't know the name of the book that this author wrote. I forget, but that sounds like the book to
His
get.
name was, it wasn't this, Workhorse. It wasn't that.
Yeah,
Something like
it was something
that.
like a life
Something
cut
like
short
that,
or something
Steve.
like that, or I forget.
And if you Google
Sorry.
her name, maybe we'll get that
You'll
up
find
there.
it.
But I have it in my email, and I sent it. Russ, you got it too, because you're part of that texting stream that we did back and forth with all that. So anyway.
Well, I apologize. I deviated greatly from
Very good.
our subject. So.
But again, we're talking about spirituality. We're talking about atheism and all these things. how
Yeah,
they come together.
and this what the book does is, because Rolheiser says there's something for speaking in academic terms and going deep and all that, but he wrote this book on purpose so it's very accessible, and so that's what we're going to try to do in this talk: keep everything accessible.
And if it's not, tell us when we're in the stratosphere a little bit. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So it starts by introducing us to a longing and the conflicts associated with it. He says, we are a restless people that occasionally find rest, dissatisfied people who occasionally find fulfillment, disquieted people who occasionally find serenity. Pascal once said, all of our miseries ultimately stem from the fact that we cannot sit still in a room for 1 hour.
Yes, yeah, I remember
So
that
why
quote.
is this?
Yeah.
Oh, and also the term, I don't know if I say this earlier, but he uses the term disease. We're not talking about a disease. We're talking about dis-ease. So when we talk about the disease, this dis-ease that we have in the soul, which is actually healthy.
So how many of you think that somewhere along the way, there's something the matter with you that you're not happy all the time? That a lot of the time you're dissatisfied, that a lot of time you're disquieted, that a lot of times you're restless. But every once in a while, run into a moment of peace, of satisfaction. But a lot of life is, and you're thinking, what's the matter with me that I'm so restless? How many of you would say, I would raise my hand about that a lot of times too. So a lot of times we think we're supposed to be at peace all the time. And the whole title of the book, The Holy Longing, means that's impossible for us. We are a restless, we are a longing bunch, the holy longing. And now you could even say in one sense, is this a proof of the existence of God? That we are longing for something that nothing seems to satisfy us in this world here that we're in. So how can we find this rest that we're looking for outside of, is it something outside of this world? Because nothing seems to be able to make us less restless. So is there something about all that? And that's what he's talking about, this longing that we all have with all this.
And proportionally,
Yeah.
we're longing or restless a lot more than we are satisfied. At least I
Yes,
said.
we are longing more than we are sad. When we find satisfaction, like I'll give you an example. I was over at the cemetery yesterday walking. It was beautiful out, and just walking, and the trees were so beautiful, and you feel this rest, but it goes away again, and you got to get moving,
Yeah,
and do all these different things you're supposed to be doing. So
Yeah, how many seconds of the day was that compared to what you've been through today?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a great example.
yeah.
He seems to give us hope that in this book we'll see that the tensions that we're going to discuss ultimately brought to focus as a sacrificed fire that directs us to God. Summed up by Augustine, who said, you have made us for yourself, Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in thee.
So, and I have to say, the only real, now, prayer to me in many ways is a kind of rest, is coming to rest. There's a certain sense of coming into this presence and coming to rest. So what Augustine's saying, and I think he's right about this, is there's nothing here on planet Earth that's going to that's going to ease this restlessness. Why do we keep trying? Why do we keep trying all these things on Earth to do that? Why do we do that if we know deep inside nothing on this earth will help us do that? And so
Takes
our
a while
hearts
to
are
realize
restless until we rest in God. And we are so stubborn about that stuff. It amazes me. So anyway, so thanks you guys for, there's a restlessness all the time. And we have, and our spirituality is about that, I think, in many ways. Yes.
Another, as he says, need for this book apparently is our struggle with our faith and our churches. Let's talk about these struggles and why.
I brought this book to try to touch this a little bit. This is by Michael Tyrion, who, by the way, Karen Blaisdell is trying to work on getting him to come to our church and speak to us. The book is called Wounded Witnesses, Reclaiming the Church's Unity in a Time of Crisis. And here he says, why are we struggling so much in our churches? And this is in his introduction. He says, over decades serving in a variety of ministerial and teaching environments, a suspicion has grown within me that the loss of the church's missionary impulse is connected to a kind of tribalism that has prevailed within the church since the Second Vatican Council. We have not been able to focus on the mission because there's too many internal rivalries, which it means to be Catholic. And he goes in the book to talk about 5 different tribes that are now existing in the life of the church that are capturing a part of the faith, but also leaving a part of the faith out with all that too. And so what's the problem in the church? We're a divided front. We're not all saying the same thing. I had a woman kind of grab me after Mass, one of the Masses, and this is happening in different dioceses where a lot of the churches are becoming very, very arch-conservative. And if I can use that word, it's a political word, arch-conservative and very narrow. And seemingly in this narrowness to exclude people that they think don't fit the paradigm of what it means to be a follower in their view, in their conservative view. And people are just leaving the churches in droves because they don't fit this narrow view that they have. And so I think this is one of the great struggles of our church in many ways, that in fact is the case. And then you got the scandal.
Right.
You know.
I hadn't thought about, historically, I guess everything was a little more united as much as we could be before Vatican II, but to have this, not that Vatican II certainly was bad, but it's a radical change that then just seemed to divide a lot of people.
It's because I think in many ways the world is very divided. Look at our politics right now. We're very fragmented. So I think that fragmentation that we're seeing in the church is part and parcel of the culture that we live in. And so I think a lot of it's that way. If the church ever got it all together and really kind of grabbed a hold of the one vision going forward and capturing the gospel, we would change the world.
Right.
We would.
Yeah.
We would. But anyway, those different things I was thinking of. So
let's get into more spirituality here. The book challenges us, I found, starting with a poem by Johann Wolfgang Goethe.
Goethe, yeah.
The image of Goethe's poem appears to me anyway to be that of a caterpillar going through metamorphosis, being set free from our obsession with darkness into light and flight. The closing line, Father, I'd like you to talk about is, and so long as you haven't experienced this, to die and so to grow, you are only a troubled guest in the dark earth. I thought that was so good.
Now,
it's an important step for us.
I know, and I have a couple things. I in the poem, he starts off with Goethe's poem called "The Holy Longing." That's why I named the book. He said, just a couple lines, if I may. Tell a wise man, or else keep silent, because the masked man will mock it right away.
I love that.
I know. Is he kind of making fun of the average person there a little bit? The masked man, in some ways.
In a way, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can say. I mean, we find it all the time in our political struggles and everything.
Yeah.
You say things to people who aren't wise. We know what wisdom is. And wisdom encompasses a lot of things and listens to people on every side and so on. Mm-hmm. And you say an idea to a person who hasn't really taken time to think it through, it can get trampled on. Is that kind of what you were feeling too?
Yeah. A desire for higher lovemaking sweeps you upward. You just long for higher. It's not talking about sex there at all, I don't think. A higher lovemaking that sweeps you onward. You just burn to love more deeply and experience things much more deeply in your life. Distance does not make you falter now. Arriving in magic, flying, and finally insane for the light. Insane for the light. Folks, whenever it comes to your life of faith, are you insane for the light? Do you burn deeply to know this God of ours in the most intimate possible way? Thomas Keating, I was watching a video one time, and here he said about the 3 stages of the spiritual life. Mm-hmm. He says, stage 1 is you learn about the other. Stage 2, the other being capital O, okay? Stage 2, I seek to be like the other. The purgative, unitive. Yeah. Stage 3, there is no other. I become one with the other. Okay. And I kept on thinking whenever I heard that about 2 becoming one flesh. Mm-hmm. Like, you and Mary Kay are different persons, but you're also one. Right. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so it's almost like there is no other. There's Mary Kay and Jerry. Yeah. But there's not they're not separate. They are one in a sense.
Right.
And the Trinity is kind of like that as well. But anyway, I kind of thought that was beautiful. But are you insane for the light that you want to become one with it in a certain way? The light being, of course, this God of ours and the meaning of life. And so long as you haven't experienced this, being insane for the light, seeking a higher lovemaking, going upward, telling the wise man, so long as you haven't experienced this, to die and to grow like that, you're only a troubled guest in a dark world.
Yeah.
What are you here for?
Yeah.
Why are we here? And he's saying we are here to just be insane for the light, to know the light like this. I think the poem is absolutely beautiful.
It is, yeah. And I apologize that I just jumped to the last stanza because I didn't know that you'd want to talk about this as much as you did, and it's an important lead-in. It really is. Yeah. Every one of these stanzas has,
that's what the whole book is about.
A gift, yeah.
Yeah, the book is about all these different things. Now, Betty said, not so sure that rest is something we make happen. Good point, Betty. Isn't it more like through quieting ourselves, receiving the? Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And then Sherry, many people don't adjust well to change. What do you mean by that? I'm curious. What change are you thinking of that they're not addressing?
I think it was around when you were talking about the Second Vatican
Council. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Now I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't how we did things.
Gosh,
yeah. What a
yes.
radical change. Yeah.
You know, we're changing the confirmation process in a diocese, and you would think we were changing church doctrine or something, you know. Everybody is freaking out. They don't even know what it's really all about, but love the poem. It's on, I don't know what page this is. It's on the page.
First, yeah.
It's just part one.
The one right
situation.
yeah. It's the page right before the.
So are we insane for the light? It's so beautiful, I think. Okay.
So now we're into it then. So
Okay.
what
Here we go,
in the
chapter
world is spirituality? Desire, our fundamental dis-ease.
Yes.
Hyphen. Our desire is always stronger than satisfaction. That's what I was meant.
Yeah.
There is within us a fundamental dis-ease and unquenchable fire that renders us incapable in this life of ever coming to full peace. So let's talk about these desires.
Now, do you get that, folks? Why are you saying why? We were just talking before we got on. Jerry got awakened in the middle of the night, and like he's not plopping right back to sleep again, you know. So he got up and did all this in the middle of the night. So, but it's almost like, what if we could come to full peace? Wouldn't that be great? But it's hard. It's very rare, and it's very fleeting to come to real peace in our lives. Come to full peace, I guess we're trying to say. And so he is saying, he's not talking about spirituality yet. He's talking about who we are. And who we are these beings that have this fundamental dis-ease, or always an unquenchable fire that runs it incapable for us to come to full rest.
The desires aren't always painful or bad.
They're not bad at all.
And I think that's important to talk about.
Yeah, and we're not dissing these desires at all. They're part of who we are.
Right.
Yeah, we're not dissing any of this. This is good. Yeah, I agree. And you just said that, not always painful, always pleasure. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes.
We have examples of that, or do we want to, I guess,
I got you, Sherry. You got what you're saying there. Go ahead.
I mean, examples of desires that are painful and desires that are pleasurable.
Yes.
Pleasurable.
Now, I also brought along with us the book by John Mark Comer on practicing the way. And he is a great reader of Rolheiser. He quotes Rolheiser a lot in his book. He said this his favorite Catholic author, and he's not Catholic in writing this. So basically, our spirituality is about what we do with our desires. Now, spirituality is what we're talking about here. But Comer puts it a little bit differently when he says, this is the beginning of his book. He says, who are you following? Everybody is following somebody, or at least something. Put another way, we're all disciples. The question isn't, am I a disciple? The question is, what am I a disciple of in my life? Right. Who am I following? What am I following? Do you ever feel that nagging thought tug at the back of your mind? Is the life I am living the life that I most deeply desire? Is this it? The folks. Now, you let me know, and you can throw up a yes or a no, a heart or a frowny face or whatever. As you sit there right now, this is kind of honesty time here a little bit. Is the life? I mean, none of us are completely. I think, as Taylor would always say to me, "Taylor, how you doing?" He goes, "I'm living the dream." Yeah. So I don't think anybody's living the dream, in one sense. But by and large, for the most part, are you living the life that you most deeply desire to live in your life right now? Is this it? Are you living that? Then he goes on to say, at one point he says, now throw your vote up there with all this. If you could do that, that would be great for you guys to do that. Powerful forces have an invested interest in our believing the myth that we are following no one at all. Many of the culture's liturgies that indoctrinate us daily, be true to yourself. You do you. Speak your truth can be traced back to the sources with a nefarious agenda. If they, and he kind of goes on about that, can make us believe that each person is a blank slate, just following the inner compass of our authentic self. We're not.
No.
We're all following something or somebody
Right.
in some way.
So we
have a spirituality.
have a spirituality.
Yes, we all have
You
one.
know,
Yeah,
so-
that's what, he's saying it a little bit of a different way, but so nobody's voting here about you're living the. You're afraid to
It's
vote.
what we do with these desires and how their spirituality is how we
Yes.
work with these things.
Yeah.
So how is spirituality so misunderstood today? I think is what we're touching on here. The term was apparently rarely discussed until the last 3 decades. I was surprised to hear that. At least spirituality as we refer to it now.
Yeah, it's a new term. We talked about piety before. That would be a term we used before, be piety. I think the problem with spirituality is that it got, in the beginning, it was kind of trendy. It wasn't really, it really wasn't a non-negotiable. It was something that, you can have a spiritual life if you do yoga or something. It was kind of a trendy thing.
Right.
But it never really was something that we thought was essential for the person's life, which it is an essential. So it never was seen to be vital. And so that's kind of how it kind of got started and why people didn't take it seriously. Even I bet you a bunch of folks in the parish don't take spirituality seriously as they need to do that. Give me
Right.
this here.
Yeah, so it isn't just like picking up spiritual books or joining a cult or going to mass more often or anything like that.
No. More important than that, and I'll just use the one word, the spirituality is what you do with your restlessness.
Right.
What you do with your unquenchable fire, what you do with, I'll just say, your dis-ease, as you said that before. So it's all about that. So it is an essential, and we all have one. Just like Comer is saying, we're all following somebody in some way.
It's so much of who we really are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've joked before about what Father Carlo Rico would say. He'd make fun of people. He'd say, "I'm not myself today. I'm just not myself today." And then he'd laugh and but he'd say, "Oh yes, you are. You are. It's part of who you are." Sorry, even those ugly moments,
Yes.
So so getting into that, then talk about how we act leads to greater integration or disintegration within our personalities, minds, and bodies, strengthening or deteriorating our relationship with God and others.
So, having said that, let me just share something with you. He starts off. He says, "Rarely is spirituality understood as referring to something vital and non-negotiable lying at the heart of our lives, which it is. This is a tragic misunderstanding," he writes on page 6. "Spirituality is not something on the fringes, an option for those with a particular bent. None of us has a choice. Everyone has to have a spirituality, and everyone does have one, either a life-saving one or destructive one. No one has the luxury of choosing here because all of us are precisely fired into life with the same madness that comes from the gods. We have to deal with that." And he goes on to talk about then what we do how we deal with all that is our spirituality. That's what that's really all about for us. It integrates our personalities, our minds, or our spirituality disintegrates our minds, our personalities. Where does he say? I don't know if it must be something else. We do not wake up in the world calm and serene, having the luxury of choosing to act or not act. We wake up crying, on fire with a desire, with madness. What we do with the madness is our spirituality and all that. So
Interesting.
yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
Well, as we move on to these three lives we're going to talk about, let's talk about the terms eros and erotic as it relates to the comparisons between these three lives that Rolheiser makes. John of the Cross regarded our spirituality as how we handle our eros.
Our desires.
Our desires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote down in that one thing I look at our culture, and one person recently called it the culture of the age of Aphrodite. Aphrodite was all about sex.
Yeah.
That somewhere along the way, we believe that I have a right to have sex anytime I want it, when I want to have it, and that the idea of not having any sex is completely foolish. Me,
Yeah.
and just almost as foolish as me is someone who has sex with just one person. You know, it's like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
And I was watching the football game over there today, and there's a commercial for this sitcom, and I forget the names. The title of the sitcom is Betty and John, Their First Marriage. What?
Yeah.
Like, why would that be a name of it? What are we thinking? It's almost like to be married once is considered silly by some people. To not be married at all and not have any,
Groundbreaking,
beyond
you
silly,
know.
beyond
Yeah.
silly. I mean,
Yeah.
you need therapy or something with all that.
I mean, I jokingly introduced Mary Kay as my first wife, but I've got no plan on. She is, but
She is your
I'm not
first
planning on a second one.
So yeah, that's exactly right. Because our culture would say, they would think, and if you anyway, it's just that we have transferred our desires into this whole sexual thing, and I think I see a lot of really unhappy people in the midst of all that, and longing for to think that sex is somehow getting close, and it is not very often that way. So. Anyway, having said that, we're going to talk about these three people. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. There's three good examples of two extremes and one in the middle that I think most of us
Something
can
like that.
relate to, you know.
Okay.
Let's start with Mother Teresa.
Okay. Very good. Yeah. Mother Teresa would be somebody. Now here in the book, he starts talking about this whole idea. What is your spirituality supposed to do in all of this? And he goes on to say, Mother Teresa as an erotic woman. I never thought of her that way too often
Most
before.
people, that's why I thought we should explain these terms.
We think of her rather as a spiritual woman, yet she was a very erotic woman, though not necessarily in the narrow Freudian sense of the word. She was erotic because she was a dynamo of energy. She may have looked frail and meek, but just ask anybody who ever stood in her way whether that impression was correct. She was a human bulldozer, an erotically driven woman. She had, however, a very disciplined woman, dedicated to God and the poor. Everyone considered her to be a saint. Why? A saint is someone who can precisely channel powerful eros in a creative, life-giving way. Søren Kierkegaard wants to find a saint as someone who can will the one thing. So first of all, we can say about Mother Teresa, very erotic woman, had this tremendous energy. And by the way, may I say this, and I have it written in my notes here someplace. Burnout does not mean you're working too hard. Burnout means you're doing the wrong thing in your life. Burnout, if you want to read somebody about all that, read Parker Palmer in some way. We were talking earlier about this question that Comer asks, is the life you're living right now the one you really desire to be living? Are you living that? I will bet if you were saying to me that you're not living the life you desire to live, You have a deep interpersonal restlessness. You maybe have a certain amount of depression in your life in some way. And also, too, low energy, not really excited about life or anything like that. You're low energy, kind of feeling a little bit more hopeless about things. But if you're living the life that you think you're called to live, you are high energy. Mother Teresa, one time, it was a book. I read the book about her spiritual life, how dry her prayer was for almost all her life with all that. And many psychologists will go on to say, aha, told you she was depressed. What she was doing was wrong. But she never acted like a depressed person. And her energy level just defied depression. She never burnt out of anything. So she was a person of great energy, number one. And then it goes on to say, and this one person says, she could channel this powerful eros into a life-giving way. So not only was she full of energy, but she was focused, which means she was on fire and she had this glue that held her together. And so a spirituality is supposed to do two things. They're supposed to give us fire. If you have fire about your life, that's a really good sign. If you're focused on what you're doing, is a second good sign. You have a pretty healthy spiritual life.
Right.
So that would be my little take on Mother Teresa there in some way.
Yeah, she was, I guess, dry, and as far as like what we look for sometimes in our spiritual life is all this affirmation from God, that good feeling and everything. That wasn't what she was about. It wasn't what God had for her.
What God had for her. No.
And I think that's true of many saints that have gone through that.
She went through a long time. Yes. Yeah.
So on the other end of the spectrum, someone who was not willing just the one thing, but many things. I mean, Janis Joplin is known for her, her great talent, and you'd probably have to say like her music was her number one thing, but there were too many other things in her life that were pulling her in different directions.
And one time she said in an interview, she said, it's difficult to make love to 15,000 people at the same time.
Yeah.
Whenever she was on stage, Janis Joplin and the Holding Company.
Yeah.
And
Big Brother and the Holding Company.
Big Brother and the Holding Company. Yeah. And you can Google Janis Joplin if you don't know who she is. On fire, a drug addict, just partied her brains out. On stage, she was just wild.
It was misdirected and not. And it says earlier in the book about a focused flame.
Yeah.
It was more like a forest fire. There's all these different desires in many directions.
The book, unlike Mother Teresa, however, Janis Joplin could not will the one thing. She willed many things. Her great energy went out of all directions and eventually created an excess and a tiredness that led to an early death. She died at the age of 27, I believe. Mm-hmm. But those activities, a total giving over to creativity, to performance, to drugs, to booze, to sex, coupled with neglect of normal rest, were her spirituality. This was her signature. It was how she channeled her eros. And so she never was able to will the one thing. So she had the fire, but she never had the glue.
Right.
And she just blew apart in many ways with all that.
Right.
So Janis Joplin would be compared to Mother Teresa that way.
Well, at this point, the book also brings up the dictum of medieval philosophy that every choice is a renunciation. So we'll talk about this before we get into our third person. And I thought that's real interesting, because whenever you choose to get married, you choose to renounce all the other women. Whatever you choose, you're renouncing more things than the one thing you're choosing.
And choosing to be a celibate, first of all, by the way, when you choose to be a celibate, you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
Whenever you do such a thing. But now
you don't know what's coming down the road.
I know.
Yeah.
Now at the age of 73, the tender age of 73, I kind of embrace it, because I know if I go to bed with somebody, I got to wake up with them the next day, and then the next day, then the next day. The next day. I got to know that. I just know that.
Yeah.
There's no sleeping around stuff. But like becoming a priest was a renunciation of a bunch. And I remember in my 20s, thinking about getting married and different things. Priesthood never really came up. Thinking, well, that means I can't do this. That means I can't do that.
Yeah.
Sounds obviously too young, but every choice is a renunciation. That is so profound. That's so true. Yeah.
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 So,
And then we talked.
so most of us are, however, are more like Princess Diana. Very interesting. The opposite of being spiritual is to have no energy. Well, we're going to talk about Diana first.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, it's my just
Yeah.
talk about, well, Diana, I would be a low grade Mother Teresa, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, she actually became a friend of Mother Teresa.
Yes, she did, which changed her life, by the way.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, she changed her life, and so
But she had that conflict of Mother Teresa on this end and the
Janet-
Mediterranean vacations on the
she
other.
was a partier, so she liked the party, so she had a little bit of Janis Joplin in her too, in some way. So she had a little bit of fire. I think Princess Di suffered from what is the disease where you don't eat anymore? Anorexia.
Oh, anorexia. Yeah, anorexia.
I
She
think
battled with that at one point.
Yeah, she had a problem with anorexia because the issue of control. And she did some marvelous things. People in the UK loved her. And many of the things she undertook were very, very beautiful as far as these projects that went. But then again, she was a partier. So Mother Teresa, what can I say here about Mother Teresa? About Princess Di. So for Princess Di, her spirituality was both the commitment to the poor and the Mediterranean vacations and all the pain and questions in between. Hers, as we can see, was a mixed road. She went neither fully the route of Mother Teresa nor the road of Janis Joplin. And so she was a troubled soul somewhere along the way in her life.
Right.
With all that.
Yeah.
So
It's complex because of her story. We all have a story, and we could point to things that cause us trouble throughout our lives, wouldn't we say?
and so could I say to you that, you know, where do you fit into all this? Where do we all fit into all this?
Right.
Mother Teresa, Janis Joplin, Princess Di.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do we fit into? None of us fit neatly in any of these things, but anyway,
It helps us understand.
yeah, help us understand spirituality.
Um,
And then he finally gets a definition.
yeah, well, the opposite of being spiritual is to have no energy. This goes back to what you're saying about Mother
Yeah.
Teresa having energy. And actually, I thought it was kind of humorous. He goes on to say, you know, someone has lost his or her identity. They don't know who or she is anymore.
Right.
You know,
The opposite of being spiritual is to have no energy, is to have lost all zest for living, lying on the couch, watching football or sitcoms, taking beer intravenously.
I like that one.
It's another it's another task, and a very vital one is to keep us glued together, integrated, so that we do not fall apart and die. And so there are the two things that he says that a healthy soul keeps us both energized and glued together.
Yes.
So
So let's talk about the soul.
yes,
We need to look at the soul to understand all this more deeply. What is it? You know, it's a spiritual tissue paper that floats around in us, picking up sins, stains. You know, isn't that our image as little kids in school? You know, we had this little white plastic bag in us that gets black marks.
You're about Castor, the friendly ghost. There.
Yeah.
So the soul is not something we have; it's something that we are. And I would say the body is the expression of your soul.
Yeah, see, I love that. It's not something that we have; it's something that we are.
Yeah. The body is expression of your soul, and he goes on to say here, and this is another quote. I just like these quotes because they're so beautiful and helping us to grasp all this stuff. A healthy soul, therefore, must do two things. First, it must put some fire in your veins, keep us energized, vibrant, living with zest, full of hope, as we sense that life is ultimately beautiful and love and worth living. Whenever this breaks down in us, something is wrong with our souls. When cynicism, despair, bitterness, or depression paralyze our souls, part of the soul is hurting. I remember reading in Parker Palmer's book that depression oftentimes is your best friend because it's your soul telling you something ain't right deep inside. So we need to listen to depression as opposed to trying to get rid of it all the time and medicating it all the time. We should be listening to it and what it's saying to us about what's going on inside of us. Secondly, healthy soul is to keep us fixed together. It has to continually give us a sense of who we are, where we came from, where we're going, and what sense there is to all this. When we stand looking at ourselves confused in the mirror and ask ourselves what sense of anything there is to this life, it is this part of the soul, our principle of integration, that is limping along. So that's the two things our soul is supposed to do. Give us fire, and as you have written down here, keep us fixed together.
Right.
And whenever those things aren't happening, somehow our soul is in, folks, let me ask, is this making sense to you? Is it helping you to understand your life a little bit? What's
I'm
going
wondering
on?
if we're getting confusing or not.
Are we getting through? Is this making sense, or are we out in stratosphere someplace? Can you let us know? Because I think it's important. Yeah. So let us know. And Steve, could you
because
keep
even
an eye?
goes so far as to say that the soul is, when the soul leaves the body, that's when the soul dies.
Yes.
When the body dies.
That's when the body dies. Yes,
The
yes,
chemicals come apart and everything.
Thank you.
Like the
Ron.
soul is really is who we are.
The soul is who we are.
Yeah.
It's who we are.
Yeah.
And our body expresses that.
Yeah.
Even as beat up as our body gets sometimes after a while. Yeah, it kind of expresses all that. Yeah, I thought that was a very beautiful paragraph with all that.
So where are we? That's
Good. Thanks,
So
Jerry.
what-
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys saying that. Anybody else, any questions about what we're talking about here with all this? Is it helping you take a look at your own life and thinking, oh, yeah, maybe I need to look at that a little bit more.
yeah, we've been reading this and thinking about it.
Yeah,
you and I, and hopefully those that's why I emphasize, get the book and read it.
Yeah, read it
No.
with it. Read it with it. Yeah, get the book. Could you put that up, Steve?
Yeah, and it's in the show notes for the stream. I put a link to the book.
Oh,
too,
okay,
so-
good. Okay, thank you. Very good. Okay, thanks, Carol. Appreciate it.
So what is healthy and unhealthy for a soul?
Well, that's what
I'm
I kind of
trying to
just
remember
shared.
that.
One
Yeah.
part there, and we could say about the idea what you were talking about before about the fire and the water.
Right.
About all that. It's something helps
Yeah.
us get fire. And there's another quote from the book.
Yeah. In fact, you want me to read this?
Yes, you can, sure.
It is for this reason that the elements of fire and water have always been so central in religious symbolism. Fire symbolizes energy, eros, passion. Water symbolizes a cooling down, a holding in containment, a womb of safety. Mythically, spirituality is often seen as an interplay between these elements, fire and water. Small wonder in mythology, the soul is forever in a forge, heated and shaped by fire, then cooled off by water.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's
Like
part
after we're
of
done
heated
tonight,
and
I hope
shaped
to
by
cool off. And
Yeah,
look at
right.
it, yeah,
Yeah, but heated and shaped by fire. I guess that's the part that happens more often, or a longer period of time than the short amount that we're cooled off by water.
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. So, but we got to get fired up. We should be getting fired up about stuff somewhere along the way. We should be, just, what was it that, I love the phrase from the poem whenever he says, insane for the light.
Mhm.
We're
Yeah.
insane for the light. Are you insane for God? Insane for spirit.
Yeah, when you're insane
the
for it,
truth.
nothing else matters. You can't
Yeah,
think of anything
yeah,
else.
yeah.
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 Huh.
Yeah.
I'd like these various cultural traditions about the images of the soul. And if in each of these three, there's nothing contradictory to our culture or the way we
No,
look
I
at
don't think
things.
so.
I mean,
No,
I think
no,
they're
no.
beautiful,
Yeah. On page 15, if you want to look, folks, the
yeah.
bottom of the page.
unless you want me to paraphrase or read them or whatever.
Well, the one about Japanese is simply that a
Yeah.
mother is supposed to keep the baby close so they feel welcomed in this strange
Yes,
world.
when their soul, their soul comes. I like the Norwegian one. There's a beautiful legend that before a soul is put into the body, that the soul is kissed by God, and during all of its life on earth, the soul retains a dark but powerful memory of that kiss and relates it to everything. And then the Jewish one, I think, is really special. There's a Jewish legend that says just before God puts a soul into the body, that soul is asked to forget its pre-natural life. Hence, just as the soul enters the body, one of God's angels presses the baby's mouth shut as a gesture that during its earthly life, it is to be silent about its divine origins. The little crevice below each one's nose, yes, is the imprint of the angel's forefinger, sealing your lips. And that is why when you're trying to remember something during your pondering, your own forefinger spontaneously arises and rests in that crevice. So I just think that's beautiful.
It's good. Yeah, all of those are, they're all good, So again, all these things are just simply saying there's something out there's a God. Just because you don't call God G-O-D doesn't mean you don't believe in God.
Right.
If you're saying there is something out there, whatever it is, and I got to find out more about this, that's a spiritual journey that we're all supposed to be on, and then to take care of this fire and this fire that we have, so it holds us together a little bit.
So it kind of brings us to our one last thing that
We're-
neither of us prepared a lot for, and we started talking about it and how we'd present this about the soul
Yeah.
being connected to the earth, and within the earth and nature, there are different things that are soul-like that connect one another, whether it's the atoms and the molecules. And
I just thought that the big thing maybe we could share as we kind of bring our conversation to a close here a little bit, the one thing that we could share with you is that everything, what I think he's trying to say, everything has a restlessness.
right.
Everything has a desire to grow. And, we're the only creatures on planet Earth that can become so depressed and so wounded and so hurt that we give up. And we don't want to go forward anymore, and we try to go backwards and run away. The rest of nature doesn't do that.
No.
And just to make the point, he goes on to say, and it's on page 17, we see this same incredible, seemingly sightless spirit in all things. In everything, from the atom to the human person, there is a blind power to unite with other things and to grow, wants to go forward. And you and I know that when we want to go forward, we go forward with our lives, we feel the best about that. When we want to run and hide and run away and give up on life, that's when the depression kicks in. And no other creature does that but us. Listen to this. Nothing can stop this power to unite and to grow. If you put a 2-inch band of solid steel around a growing watermelon, as it grows, it will burst the steel. Wow. Everything is driven. Rocks, plants, insects, animals are just as erotic, an erotic rock. There you go, folks.
Yeah.
An erotic rock. Settle down, everybody. And as
That's what's
restless,
wrong with my rocks.
as restlessly driven as human beings are, there is, on the same level, a stunning similarity between a bamboo plant pushing blindly upward into the pavement, a baby feeding, an young adolescent restlessly driven by hormones, the tangible restlessness of a singles bar. Haven't been to one of them lately, so I can't relate too much to them. But I went to them for a while in my life. And Mother Teresa kneeling constantly at the prayer before God. Desire is working in each case. Something sometimes blindly and sometimes consciously. Man, that kind of nails it.
Mm-hmm.
I think for us. Now, I think the next chapter, I was writing about this today. The next chapter is titled The Current Struggles with Christian Spirituality. Why is our spirituality oftentimes so unhealthy? What's going on that makes them so unhealthy sometimes? And I think that's where we're going to be going next. He's got a bunch of them there too. Yeah. One of them, hint, pathological busyness.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
It's a big issue.
Yeah.
And this is where Comer And his other book called the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry quotes this chapter all over the place.
Yeah.
This chapter here. So what do you think? Anything else we can?
No, I guess we better, since we start to say anything else, we'll get deep into the weeds. And
Yeah.
I
Anything
think we
else?
pretty much covered.
Folks, do
everything.
you have any questions? Paul, is everything?
we have a few
everything
minutes
is
yet,
connected.
but-
Amen. Thank you. Yes, I think if honest, we experience all this on our journey. Yeah, makes sense. And thank you.
Is this there's 10 chapters. Is this something that we should do
Yeah, you guys
for the
wanna keep
next
going?
10 weeks?
I think there's
You
lots
know,
to talk about here.
Yeah.
Next week, and I hope we brought it down to planet Earth, this whole idea of spirituality, and made you think about some stuff. And we'll prepare for the next one. And thanks, Jerry, for everything you
No,
did. to get this
thanks for
started.
having me.
You
Yeah.
did a
Good.
lot of stuff with our notes. We had a lot of notes here with all this. Steve, thanks a lot. Anything else we should be putting up there that they need to see? Did you put Ellie? Did you find that thing by Etty Hillesum?
I couldn't find the YouTube video, but
We'll get it up there
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah, like I said, I just hit Google and a number of things came up on the books, and the video was right there on the page that came up for me.
Okay.
So
All right. Anyway, fascinating person to think about.
yeah,
with
the
spirituality.
video, when you look at the picture that the video, the thumbnail, it's a woman with stones behind her. They're having like a conference at St. Paul's Cathedral.
Yeah,
And she's
yeah,
introducing it, and you can skip her, not to, she's just doing housekeeping. Skip her and which is about 5 minutes, and then get right to this author. And it's very compelling.
He's good. He's pretty good.
Yes.
He's pretty good.
And I found it very moving. I'm going to listen to it again.
All right, me too. I'm going to listen to it too, and I hope Teresa, my niece, listens to it. We have much to talk about together ourselves. So, thanks, folks, for joining us. Appreciate being with you. It's an honor. It's an absolute honor, and let's continue the journey of our own spiritualities together.
Hey, and share this show with other people. We're not monetizing it. Most
Yeah,
people
yeah,
say,
yeah,
"Hey,
yeah.
share this." Click the notification bell. We don't have a notification bell, but I just like to say, share it with your family and friends, especially the spirituality side. I'm encouraging all my kids to watch the show. So
Thank you. Thank you.
said,
Yeah,
if you kids had a little YouTube show, I'd watch it. So
And Russ, ask Teresa to watch and see what she thinks
Yeah.
about all of it, and see if it's something that might be up her alley for the next 10 weeks. 10 weeks.
We're not just always preaching to the choir. We want people
we
to
wanna-
tune in
wanna
that
get
are
outside
they're
the
searching.
a lot of thank yous here at the end. So I think people really like it and appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, very much. See you next week. Goodbye now.